In August 1929, General Motors tycoon John Raskob wrote an article for Ladies' Home Journal. The title was, "Everybody Ought to Be Rich." His method was simple: invest $15 a week in stocks. In 20 years, he promised, you would have $80,000. Raskob wasn't a dreamer. He had been vice president of General Motors, an architect of the boom itself. By 1929, he was chairman of the Democratic National Committee, advising the party on economic matters. And he believed it, or so he said. 2 months later, the market collapsed. Millions who followed his advice were ruined. Raskob, meanwhile, had hedged every bet. He survived the crash and would build the Empire State Building with what remained. When Raskob typed those words in August 1929, the Dow Jones Industrial Average stood at 380. It had doubled in 3 years, quadrupled since 1921. Every tick upward confirmed his math. In the decade since the World War, America had already lapped war-torn Europe. By 1929, the United States was producing nearly half the world's manufactured goods. But somewhere between the factory whistle and the closing bell, the product became secondary to the promise. The machine didn't just make cars anymore. It made believers. The stock market became the heartbeat of that belief. Prices kept rising. New investors flooded in every day. Not just the wealthy, but ordinary people. Teachers, shopkeepers, workers. Everyone wanted a piece of the future. But behind the excitement, something was changing. Stock prices were drifting away from reality. They were no longer tied to what companies actually earned, but to what people felt they were worth. And then came the most dangerous part. People began buying stocks with money they didn't have, through something called margin. You could borrow most of the cost and still own the investment. It felt like a shortcut to wealth, but it was a trap, because if prices dropped, even slightly, you wouldn't just lose your investment. You would owe money you could never repay. Banks were supposed to be safe, but many abandoned caution. They lent heavily to investors. They poured depositors' money into the market. They chased the same rising prices. And quietly, the entire financial system became exposed. Not to reality, but to confidence. By 1929, some investors began to see the truth. Prices were too high. The growth wasn't sustainable. So they started selling. Slowly at first, almost unnoticed, but in a system built on belief. Even a small doubt can spread like fire. As prices dipped, fear replaced excitement. Investors who had borrowed money were forced to sell. Their losses triggered more losses, and more selling. It fed on itself, a chain reaction no one could stop. People weren't thinking anymore. They were trying to escape. Then came the breaking point. October 1929. The market was flooded with sell orders, but there were no buyers left. Prices collapsed. Jesse Livermore made $100 million that week shorting the market. Meanwhile, a teacher in Omaha who had borrowed against her house lost both. Fortunes built over years disappeared in hours. And just like that, the illusion was gone. But the market wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Banks began to fail. People rushed to withdraw their savings, only to find there was nothing left. Life savings gone. Businesses lost access to money. Factories shut down. Workers were sent home with no idea if they'd ever return. Unemployment spread like a shadow across the country. And the collapse didn't stop at America's borders. Countries that depended on American loans suddenly stood alone. Trade slowed. Economies weakened. One by one, nations were pulled into the crisis. What started as a market crash became a global disaster. Over 12 million people were unemployed. Families lost their homes. Parents skipped meals so their children could eat. Men who once provided stood in long lines for bread. And for the first time in years, hope began to disappear. The crash of 1929 wasn't just an accident. It was built slowly, on risk, on borrowed money, on the belief that nothing could go wrong. And when that belief broke, everything else followed. John Raskob lived another 30 years. He watched the world rebuild from the ruins he had helped create. He never wrote about wealth again. The article stayed in the archives, waiting, because sometimes, the most dangerous moment is when everyone believes it can't end. John Raskob died in 1958. The Empire State Building remains.